around the world. It's Learn Ubuntu Live, presented by learnubuntu.org, with your host, Tom Judge. This is the presentation for Chapter 9 of the Learn Ubuntu Internet Fundamentals course. In this chapter, we're going to introduce you to the rudiments of the HTML language. We'll be sticking mainly with very basic HTML4 compatible code for this introductory course. We will be adding some HTML5 important informational updates to the appendix section of this course as time progresses. And throughout the rest of this course, we'll be concentrating on learning the basics of the core HTML language. And at the end, we'll actually see some CSS stuff as well. So let's get started with the presentation already. This presentation, again, we said goes with Chapter 9, and we're going to go over the readings and the lab exercises from that chapter and give you an outline of what to expect when you're working your way through the material here. Now, beginning HTML is focused on understanding how the browser reads the HTML code that we enter in our text editor. Now, remember we mentioned that Mr. Tim Berners-Lee created the original HTML and also the Netscape Navigator browser, which has been retired since about 2008. However, you know, Mozilla is a descendant of that, and so is Firefox, so we're in good hands. Let's talk about the HTML code itself for a second. Here we show you a Doctype definition line of code. And this code is what tells the browser how to interpret the whole rest of the page. So this is fairly important stuff to make sure we get this straight. And if you notice in there, it's actually referring to a URL somewhere on the internet of where this code can be found. So we're not actually putting all the specifics here. We're telling it to point to this location on the internet, this right here, this URL. We're telling it to go there to refer to how this page is supposed to be created and how the browser should handle the HTML code that we're creating. Now, every HTML page has an opening and closing HTML tag. We're going to be introduced to a whole series of tag sets here. And these are the basic ones used to create a page. And this is an opening and a closing tag set. We're going to see some tag sets coming up that are all in one. Here's our heading tags. If you take our JavaScript development course, you're going to learn how to put JavaScript in this area. A lot of information can go in a heading tag for a web page, such as meta tags for search engines to find you and get you good spots in the search. So the heading tag, the head tag, which is nested inside the HTML tags, is an important tag, and we'll see more about this coming up. We then have a title tag. The title tag is what displays in the title bar of your browser window. Whatever you put there will be displayed for people to see. Now, the body tag surrounds most of the body of the document. And again, these are opening and closing tags. We can use the heading tags to make text larger in certain areas of our web page. And we have differences in those between H1 and H6. H1 being the larger. The higher the number, the smaller the text. We also have a paragraph tag set. And again, those we have an opening and closing paragraph tag. And we're mentioning here to conform with strict HTML to always make sure you're not leaving missing closing tags. Now, as part of this chapter, we're going to begin to get familiar with the Emacs editor, which is a very good, very powerful text editor. And we're going to learn to load some helpers that are going to help us make our work learning HTML even easier. Remember now, we're using and we're saving all these examples that we make in the public HTML folder that we created in a previous lab exercise. Our first example is a blank document, and we do this just in case you want to save this and use it as a template. This page will show perfectly blank. We also, throughout these examples, and I want to say something about this, I highly encourage you to type all this yourself until you're familiar with this code, okay? A good way to learn is to type it. If you copy and paste, it's going to take you longer to learn it and memorize the code. So once you have it memorized, you can copy and paste all you want. We give you these handy copy and paste boxes throughout the remainder of the course with the code examples there. And we also show you the examples live on our web server so you know if you got it right or not. Now, in the Emacs, we're also going to get familiar with and use the quick save button. Here, notice it's not grayed out because we haven't saved this document. We made some changes. We didn't save it yet. The button is active. After you click it, the button becomes grayed out to indicate that we just saved this document. And again, we did an earlier lab where we changed the name of the index.html that we made as part of our course prep setup. So now we can use that URL, http localhost /tilde your name folder. So remember, and we just had a previous presentation about directories on a web browser, okay? The root of your server for this URL is your public HTML file. And here's our first blank page example. Notice it is blank, except that if you look up top here, you see the text you put in the my title, in the title tags. There it says my HTML. So whatever you put in those title tags always appears in the menu bar of the browser. Here's some more important HTML tags we'll be getting familiar with, beginning with this chapter and continuing through the remainder of the course. Here's a break tag. Now notice, here's one that's all in one. There's no open and closing tags. It's the break space / and closing the angle brackets. And that again is to maintain compatibility with some of the newer HTML document formats. Now we have tags, simple tags to bold the text. This is an opening and closing bold tag. We introduced the opening and closing italics tag. You may notice that Firefox, at least my browser by default, displayed it in italic and red. And the underline tag. And we show you an example. You can combine them. We also show the superscript tag, which raises the text and makes it smaller, as well as the subscript tag, which also makes it smaller but lowers the text. Again, please note that as we go through all these lab exercises, we want to save time. We don't want to waste time typing the same stuff over and over again. That's why we show you the template you can save from the first exercise here. We also are going to show you that we use the Save As quick button in Emacs, which we're highlighting in this slide right here. Okay? That will let us save the file as a new example. So many times what we're going to do is we're going to make an example, see it work, and then go ahead and save it as a new example and add to that. That's how we learn, by doing. Again, here's, in one of these first examples, this is an important point to make, so I'm reiterating it here besides the labs. White space doesn't count by itself. If you notice an example, we deliberately had you add a lot of extra white space as you made the HTML file, but it didn't show up in the page. We'll see that soon. Also, properly nesting your tags. Notice the bold tag is on the extreme outside, and the italic is nested in the bold, and the underline is nested in that. And we show you some examples in that in this chapter too, just to get us familiar. Here's our page, by the way. And here we can see the effects of combining the bolding and the underlining tags and the italic tags together. And we also show two different heading styles. This is the H1, this is an H2 or H3, I believe. Now, note the different size settings in your second lab result between the welcome and the line under that. Here is a smaller heading example. Notice how the paragraph tags work. Notice how some text is bolded, italicized, and underlined as we specified. Note the effect of the break tag, and note particularly at the white space. Remember we had you put a lot of white space on this lower line here, this we see in the browser. Everything except the first white space each time is ignored, and there's ways to manipulate that. We'll learn that later in the course. We also cover in this chapter the unordered list tag set, the UL opening and closing tags, which work with the list item tag. And here's our options for that. Generally cross-browser compatible. It used to be a lot more incompatible. The fact is that now we're using CSS to do the formatting. So really in this course we do show you some basic HTML formatting, but for the most part, once you get good at that, you're going to be doing it with CSS. Here's our ordered list tag set. Notice the ordered list also uses a list item tag nested inside the ordered list tag set. And again, as we evolve through HTML and CSS, there are always changes. We note that here in the red note here on the sheet about using CSS, and we'll see more about that later in the course. For now, let's concentrate on the basics. Here's our ordered list example types. We can use attributes to set those. The div tag we mentioned here, we have a whole lab exercise on using the div tag and CSS to mark off sections of the page for formatting. And here's another one of those all-in-one tags, the horizontal rule tag. It's angle bracket HR space / closing bracket to maintain full XML compatibility. We also introduced the font tag, but again, most of the font tag stuff has been deprecated by CSS. We show it to you. You should know about it. And very important, the comments tag. As you write a sophisticated page, you may want to leave little notes and breadcrumbs for yourself when you come back to it in a while. And here's some of our HTML formatting attributes that we outlined in the lab. And we're just mentioning them again here. And again, I will also again say that at the end of this course, we will start to learn how to use CSS to do our formatting. And that really is the preferred way to do it. In Lab 4, we install the Emacs-html helper, and here's some key screens from that you'll encounter. We use the Synaptic Package Manager in this example. And if you're on the newer system and you may not have the Synaptic Package Manager, you can download it from the Software Center and then do this lab. And here we're showing the difference that it makes after having the Emacs-html helper. It colorizes the text for us, makes it easy to read and edit. It also adds some features that will let us shortcut between this and our browser, and we continue with those settings in this chapter as well, these lab exercises. Here in Lab Exercise 9, Chapter 9, rather, Lab Exercise 3, we promptly void our warranty on our Firefox browser by customizing these settings. The purpose of this lab, and I'm not going into the details here, it's all detailed in the lab exercise. It's step by step for you. We change the settings in our Firefox browser. So when we go to View Source, it opens the source in the Emacs editor for us automatically. And then we also, later on, do some stuff with the Emacs editor, and that points us to the Firefox browser. Here's our list example, by the way, showing what the results would look like. And again, we show you it in IE here. It seems to be compatible. But again, early on, you want to stress the importance of checking your web pages in multiple browsers. We lean towards Firefox. I like it. I use it myself. But if I don't check my work in IE or Safari or any of the other big contenders, Chrome, I got to know what everybody's seeing when they go to my web page. It's important. Here's a little thing about quotes as you start this example. Remember, we're using a plain text editor, the Emacs editor. If you decide to use another editor, you don't use a word processor. You have to have simple double quotes and single quotes. None of these fancy opening and closing quotes. They're just not going to work. They're going to louse you all up. Stay away from them. Here we're just showing the results of 9.3. And the reason we're showing this is after you've added that HTML helper, you get this little code that shows the bottom of the page, which lets you add in who the page was made by and saves the date and time was last updated for you. It's a handy little feature that comes with the Emacs HTML helper at no extra charge. So, as you're going through this course, some important tips. Type carefully. Look closely for errors. View each page in your browser. Also, if you have the opportunity, view each page in an alternate browser. Make sure that the Emacs modifications are working properly before you go on. We use that throughout the rest of the course to go back and forth between the examples and the actual viewing of the example in the browser. So having those working, those shortcuts working, will save you a lot of time now and in the future as you start to develop web pages for a living even, maybe. Who knows? All right? Read all the readings and do all the labs in this chapter. You have a self-assessment at the end. If you have any questions, you can always post a message to your instructor or try the help chat room or send me an email. We're here to help. So we hope you enjoyed this presentation and come back again soon to see our next presentation for this course and others. Portions of this program were pre-recorded.